There's a man whose story almost feels like a movie, not because he made millions overnight, and not because he stumbled into some miracle opportunity. It's because the thing that changed his life was something he had been doing for years without realizing how big it would become. His name is Rick Harrison, and yes, before Pawn Stars, before the TV cameras, before the fame, he was just a guy in his 20s trying to make rent. A guy who felt stuck. A guy who felt like life kept throwing him curveballs. But there was one thing about Rick that stood out: he hated wasting time. So every time he was bored at home, every time he felt stuck, he would sit down and pick apart old electronics. Broken radios. TVs someone threw away. Random gadgets people didn't want. He'd open them up, tinker, fix what he could, and resell the parts for a couple dollars. At first it was just a hobby. Then it became a small side hustle. Then, a habit he couldn't stop. People didn't think anything of it. Oh, that's Rick, he fixes junk. No one imagined it was the beginning of something massive. But here's where the story takes a turn. One day, someone walked up to him with a broken TV. Rick fixed it like usual. But instead of selling it for a small profit, the customer asked, "Do you fix stuff like this often? Because I have more." That one question opened a door. Suddenly Rick started getting more items. More repairs. More sales. More connections. And then he noticed something that would change everything. People didn't just want repairs. They wanted to trade. Old jewelry for store credit. A watch for a stereo. A guitar for cash. Small deals, random items, but there was a pattern. People were always looking for quick liquidity. And that's where the idea hit him. What if I become the middleman for everything? Not just electronics. Not just repairs. Everything. It was a crazy idea at the time. Pawn shops had a bad reputation. People avoided them. No one thought a pawn business could become anything impressive. But Rick wasn't thinking about reputation. He was thinking about opportunity. He talked to his father, pitched the idea, and together they scraped together what they had. It wasn't much. It wasn't clean or polished. The building was rough. The shelves were uneven. Half the items looked like they belonged in a yard sale. But they opened anyway. And for a while? Nothing magical happened. Just long hours. Unpredictable customers. Small profits. Slow days that dragged forever. But little by little, something started happening. People realized Rick wasn't judging them. He wasn't ripping them off. He wasn't desperate. He was fair, brutally fair, and he had a memory like a machine. He knew the value of almost anything the moment he saw it. If someone brought in a guitar, Rick knew the brand, the year, the demand. If someone brought in a coin, Rick knew the pricing before they finished talking. If someone brought in something rare, Rick became the expert instantly. That small pawn shop, dusty shelves, mismatched counters, began turning into a place people trusted. And one day, a TV producer walked in. They were looking for a show centered around real negotiations, real people, real items, and real stories. They couldn't have picked a better place. Rick almost turned it down, thinking it would be a distraction. But finally he agreed. And the moment the first episode aired, everything changed. The shop wasn't just a shop anymore. It became a landmark. A business built from decades of slow grind, repairs, trades, tiny profits, suddenly turned into a global brand. Rick went from hustling old electronics for $5 profit to running one of the most recognizable businesses on television. But here's the part most people don't realize. It wasn't the TV show that made Rick successful. It wasn't fame. It wasn't luck. It was the years he spent learning value. Years he spent fixing junk. Years he spent dealing with people one-on-one. Years of habits that nobody thought mattered. The show didn't create his success. It exposed it. His real fortune was built before the cameras ever turned on. And the message buried inside his story is simple but powerful. Sometimes the thing you do, just to pass time, is the thing that builds your future. Sometimes the skills you think are useless become the skills that change everything. Sometimes the habit nobody notices becomes the engine of your entire life. Rick didn't chase trends. He didn't look for shortcuts. He didn't try to impress anyone. He simply kept sharpening the one thing he was good at, understanding value. And that one skill eventually turned into a multi-million-dollar empire, built from old electronics, broken items, tiny repairs, and a desire to keep learning when life wasn't giving him much. It's a reminder that your breakthrough rarely comes from something shiny and new. It usually comes from something you've been doing all along, you just haven't realized how powerful it can become.